Hey, Tommy, what's up?
We were just seeing if Kali was here because she was in the room and then I don't know if her Wi-Fi died and then she didn't come back.
Yeah, Kali was in the wrong room, so I moved her over to the right room.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Do you need help getting back over, Tommy? You got it. Okay. Hello, do you need any help? Oh, are we
Hi.
just one?
Yeah, we had three great folks, so our round went a little fast.
No problem. Great. So folks, you can go ahead and start your break. We're going to be coming back together in, well, when this break, let me see when this breakout. No, the clock on here is not when we, is not for when we come back together. That's for when showcase starts because we're live streaming this right now. We have some family and friends watching the live stream.
Oh,
But
no.
we're going to come back together in about 10 minutes. So
Okay.
want to take a little break and then come back right around 1:30, okay?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Do you is Addison in?
I'm sorry, Kaylee, what did you ask?
Do you know what room Addison is in? Like our coach?
Yeah, but Addison's judging right now, so she's a little bit busy.
All right.
Did you finish what you were doing?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you can just sit tight, and we'll be coming back together at 1:30, okay?
All right.
Okay. Hey, Ashley, welcome. I know you weren't able to join us earlier. We're finishing up the rounds right now, and we'll be coming back together at around 1:30 in 10 minutes. So you can just sit tight.
Hi, I'm so sorry. I actually just hopped on to say because I realized that I totally forgot. I told Mr. Bowden, but I didn't have the chance to tell Coach Sasan. And I just really wanted to say sorry because I know that like I kind of like I
Yeah,
probably
that's
like
okay. Yep, so Coach Sasan is judging right now, but you'll be able to see him in 10 minutes, okay?
okay, yeah, I'm so sorry. I actually have to hop off. I just wanted to like
Oh,
come back. I really
okay.
like that. I'm
That's
super
sweet of you.
sorry.
Thank you, Ashley. I will convey that to him, okay?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Ashley. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, folks, welcome back. We're just gonna wait for all of our breakout rooms to close in the next 15 seconds or so. All right, welcome back, everybody. How are we feeling? Did we have fun? We see some awesome competitors and have a good time. Yeah, good. So we're gonna take a 5-minute break before we start our showcase. So go get a snack, stretch your legs, take a Zoom break, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. All right, if you want to start making your way on back to your devices, we're gonna get ready for our showcase. I'll turn those cameras back on. Get ready to roll. All right. Great. All right, so folks, I want to give you a chance just to look over the schedule, and then I'm going to send you over into your breakout rooms one last time, as they say in Hamilton, to talk with your coaches to get ready for your showcase. Just take a moment and look over the schedule so you know what's coming. All right, so this is probably definitely my favorite part of our whole week of camp. And I want that to feel like that for you too. So that any nerves you have or any questions you have are addressed, we're going to kick it off with just a couple minutes with our coaches, talking through what's about to happen, maybe practicing, maybe warming up, just making sure everybody feels really good to go. Coaches, just check me. I got all my categories here: Congress, Deck, Extemp, Middle School Interp, Middle School PF, High School PF, LD, Oratory, SPAR. Anybody not hear their category? Cool, cool. All right. So head on over to your categories one last time, folks, to get ready for our showcase. Here we go. If anybody needs help getting to their category, I'm happy to help you get there. Just stick around and I will zoom you over. Elizabeth, can you please help me remember, were you in interp or declamation? I forgot.
Inter.
Interp. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you so much. There you go. All right. At this point, everybody should have an invite to go to a breakout room. If you accept it, you will go hang out with your coaches for a few minutes to get ready for showcase. Kayla and Casey, everything okay? Maybe you stepped away for a minute. Okay, I will Slack you both. Just checking, TLT, are you good to do the time signals and I'll do the spotlighting again?
Absolutely.
Cool. You excited?
Yes.
For those of you joining us on our live stream, we're really excited too, because we also haven't seen all of the students work all week. We've been just like handling them and getting everything administrative done. So we're all in for a great show, I think. It should be a lot of fun.
Super excited.
Should be a lot of fun. I was just hearing from some of the coaches that the tournament was really good and
Oh,
they
good.
did a great job. So yay.
Here we go.
Here we go. About 2 more minutes. Do a little sound check for me, TLT. Can you hear this?
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for. You've been searching in the dark, your sweat soaking through the floor. And buried in your bones, there's an ache that you can't ignore. Taking your breath, stealing your mind, and all that was real is left behind. Don't fight it, it's coming for you, running at you. It's only this moment, don't care what can gather. Your fever dream, can't you see, getting closer? Just surrender, cause you feel the feeling taking over. It's fire, it's freedom, it's flooding open. It's a picture in the pulpit and your blind devotion. There's something breaking at the brick of every wall, it's holding all that you know. So tell me, do you want to go? Where it's covered in all the color lights, where the runaways are running the night. Impossible comes true, it's taking over you. We light it up, we won't come down, and the sun can't stop us now. Watching it come true, it's taking over you.
All right, folks, welcome to our BDL Week 2 Camp Showcase. We're so excited you are here. Here is what our flow of the day is going to look like. And I want to remind all of our students that it's really important to have your cameras on if possible, so that you can show your support by smiling and giving thumbs up and eye contact to all of our performers. I am at this point going to make the chat just for hosts and co-hosts so that we can see TLT's time signals when they come up. She'll be letting us know when we're halfway through each category, and so that people are not distracted while they're performing by lots of chat messages coming up. I'm sure if you could see them, they would say things like, wow, this is awesome. You're incredible. I love this so much. But we don't want to distract people, so we're going to save all that for later. Okay, I promise we'll have time for shout outs later. Okay. All right. So without further ado, I want to welcome to our showcase our middle school interp coaches. So Tommy, do you want to take it away?
I think Addison has the order, so I'm going to let Addison take it away because she's my magical co-host.
Great. Addison, go for it.
So first up, we have Kali doing a selection from Howl's Moving Castle as an HI. Kali, take it away.
Holly, are you able to unmute? We cannot hear you. Maybe Addison, we should go to our second speaker and come back to Kali.
Yes, I think that will be good. Next
Wait, no,
up,
no, you don't have to. You don't have to. Sorry.
Kali, you're
That's
back.
okay.
I'm sorry. I was trying to, like, my mom's on a call and my Zoom was like, sorry, you can't call while your mom's on the call. I had to click it like 1,000 times. And
That's okay. We're so glad you're here. Would you like to turn your video on so that we could see you?
yes, I would not mind at all. Let me
All
just,
right. Go for
Let
it,
me get my
kiddo,
mic.
whenever you're ready.
okay, I'm going to be forming a scene I really like from Howl's Moving Castle. Let's do this. Sophie, oh hi. So we're gonna be closing up the shop in like right now. So me and the girls thought it would be fun if you went with us to get lunch. No, thank you. I have to actually finish this hat, but thank you for the offer. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that, sweetie. Is that Howl's Castle? Excuse me, who's Howl again? Oh, you don't know? He's only the most powerful wizard in all of the kingdom. I even heard he ate this girl. He even ate this girl called Martha so he can become more powerful. Oh my God, that's disgusting. Why would he do that? Don't worry, he only does that to pretty girls. Aren't you supposed to be leaving? Aren't you closing up the shop like right now? Oh, right. Sorry, Sophie. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Thank goodness they're gone. What was it? Oh, right. Okay, the address. Get this hat. Yeah, this one looks fine. And that's the whole scene. I finished.
All right, up next, we have Kaylee performing his intro and a scene from a novel called Children of Blood and Bone.
Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi. It is so much more than just a book. Tommy Adeyemi said she wanted to write a book that even racists wanted to read. And she definitely succeeded. Tommy Adeyemi makes us think about how the color of our skin affects the place we have in the social hierarchy. And she shows that everyone is beautiful in their own way. Tommy is not afraid to show the way people try to hide what they mean when they say regal. There are so many people who, when they say pretty, they mean light. And even others who make people feel bad for not living up to that light beauty standard. Like it's something they can change. The truth is that this fictional world that Tommy created is partly from our world. And how some people are never accepted for who they are. And just like the main character, Amari, on this page, that can make them feel uncomfortable being themselves. Samira, have I mentioned how regal you look today? I bite my tongue and drain the rest of my tea. The mother says regal, the word lighter hides behind her lips. Like the regal Olays who can proudly trace their lineage back to the royal families who were Oricia's crown. Not common like the farmers who toiled the fields of Mina or Logos, or even our own merchants overing their wares in the sun. Not unfortunate, like me, the princess mother is almost too ashamed to claim. As I peek at Samira from behind my cup, I'm struck by her new, soft brown complexion. It was only a few lunches ago she shared the same coloring as me. I long to be here. Maybe my life would finally be easier if I were.
Absolutely excellent work, Kaylee and Kali. Next up, we have Sukaira doing a section from the Bob's Burgers movie as an HI.
Okay. Wait, I'm a what? Nothing. What? You're great. That feels nice. I know. Don't rub my sesame seeds off. I won't. Don't worry. Skipping a couple scenes. Louise, come do the dead man drop. Oh, that's over there, and I'm over here. But thank you. She's scared. No, I'm not. I mean, I'm scared over here. How comfortable I am over here. She's afraid that her hat will fall off. You're afraid my hat will fall off. So, gotcha. Good one. I mean, kinda. I don't know why she still wears that thing. It's like she's 5. Oh boy, baby. What did you say? Did you say just use the B word? I'm pretty sure she said lady. I heard rabies. I will show you rabies. Easy, easy. What's going on over here? A little conflict?
Woohoo! All right. Up next, we have Elizabeth doing a paragraph or two from the novel Matilda.
And exactly at that moment, Nigel at the other end of the room jumped to his feet and started pointing at the blackboard and screaming, "The chalk! Look, the chalk! It's moving on its own!" So hysterical and shrill that Nigel's scream put everyone in place, including the Trunchbull, looked up at the blackboard. The Trunchbull, and there, sure enough, a brand new piece of chalk was hovering near the great black writing surface of the blackboard. "It's writing something! The chalk's writing something!" And indeed it was. Agatha. "What in the blaze is this?" yelled the Trunchbull. It shaken her to see her own first name being written by an invisible hand. She dropped Walford on the floor, then yelled at nobody in particular. "Who's doing this? Who's writing it?" Then the chalk continued to write. "Agatha, this is Magnus. This is Magnus." Everyone in the place heard the gasp that came from Trunchbull's throat. "No," she cried. "It can't be Magnus." "It is Magnus, and you better believe it." Miss Honey at the side of the room glanced swiftly at Matilda. The child was sitting very straight at her desk, head held high, mouth compressed, and the eyes glittering like 2 stars. "Agatha, give my Jenny back her house." For some reason now everyone looked at the Trunchbull. The woman's face had turned white as snow, and her mouth opening and shutting like a hellboat out of water and giving out a series of strangled gasps. "Give my Jenny back her wages. Give my Jenny back the house. Then get out of here. If you don't, I will come and get you. I will come and get you like you got me. I'm watching you, Agatha." The chalk stopped writing. It hovered for a few moments, and then suddenly it dropped to the floor with a tinkle and broke in two. Walford had managed to resume in his seat, and the Fargo screamed, "Miss Trunchbull's on the floor! Miss Trunchbull's fell down!" That was the most central bit of news that the entire class jumped out of their seats to have a really good look. And there she was, the huge figure of the headmistress, stretched full length on her back across the floor, out of count.
Woohoo! All right. And last, but certainly not least, we have Coco and Liz doing a comedic HI from the musical Hamilton.
Hello. Liz. Yep. Okay. Hello, my name is Hoka Suzuki. My name's Elizabeth. And we decided to do Hamilton because Hamilton is such a big part of our country. And I feel like without Hamilton, we wouldn't be that much of a country because he was Secretary of State and he set up the banks and it was amazing. He was a prided soldier in the Revolutionary War, and also Lin-Manuel Miranda's work of I don't even have words for it. It's just amazing. It's like, I don't know how to describe it. Hip hop, rapping. It's just like, it's so amazing. He takes the story of Alexander Hamilton and turns it into something beautiful. So let's get started. Okay. I am not. Wait, what were you going to say? Scene three. Oh, we're starting from scene 3, John Adams. Scene 3. Okay. A message from John Adams. A message from John Adams. A message from John Adams. I swear, if John Adams even mentions my lock of hair turning white, off with his head! Hello, John Adams. Don't mention this wig. Okay. Hello, Your Majesty. Speak up. I can't hear you. Hello, Your Majesty. I'm not deaf. But you're going to make me if you keep screaming. And if you make me deaf, I will chop your head and... Okay, I get it, Your Majesty. Good. So, I wanted to know why you thought it was okay to tax more. What did she say? Taxes. These little things are just little fees here and there. That's all. Mr. King, sir, your voice went up 3 octaves. Please don't talk about this. But we don't talk about taxes. No, no, no. We don't talk about taxes. Well, time's up.
Let's give it up for middle school insert, folks.
All right. Woo! Good work, you guys.
That was fantastic. Nice job to all of our middle school interpreters. Y'all were amazing. Oops, wrong slide. We are going to, here we go. Here next from oratory, I'd like to welcome Rachel and Mosab to the stage.
Woo! Hello, everybody. Welcome to the original oratory portion of the showcase. We are so happy to share things with you. We have a small but mighty crew today, and our first speaker that we will be hearing from is Unique.
Hello, I'm just gonna set up real quick. Okay. Great, okay. When I was younger, I had this fascination for law, specifically the 1893 Nix versus Hedden case, where the U.S. Supreme Court deemed that the tomato was, no, not a fruit, a vegetable. Congress had previously implemented a tariff act that imposed a 10% tax on vegetables, and the Supreme Court just so conveniently decided that tomatoes were vegetables for a little juice on the side, you know what I mean? I mean, hey, it's okay if we mislabel this delicious red fruit, as long as we get some profit from that vegetable tax, right? Society misconstrues and molds things for its own benefit at the expense of the object losing its true self, whether it be tomatoes, capitalism, the severity of COVID cases, or ourselves. Society is pushing our generation to its limit. From having to shoulder climate change to upholding the legacy of those before us, we, like this planet, are burning out. The main target? Gifted students. According to Christian Mueller, a professor at the University of Memphis, in 2018, the National Association for Gifted Children, NAGC, recorded that 10% of gifted adolescents were seen for symptoms of depression in clinical settings, where reported suicide is the second highest cause of death for those of 10 to 24 years of age. Society has pushed this mentality on us that we have to strive to be the best child, the best student, the best for society, the best. But it's never the best for us. So today, let's juice those big brains of ours First, let's focus on the history of how the gifted label came to be. Next, the detriments of being a gifted kid. And lastly, blending it all together to find a solution. After all, the pH of a tomato solution is 4, and no one wants to be basic. That's all, yeah.
Love that, Unique. Thank you so, so much. Dare I say it was unique. All right, up next, we have Ashal coming to the stage with a lovely original oratory.
This is currently a piece without a name. Okay. ओहो, ये तो तुम्हारी तरह लगती है. My paternal grandma was only trying to check in on my movie night with Dad when she was shocked by what she saw on screen. You see, she knew we were into what she called Marvel Sharvel heroines, with the, oh, very handsome Iron Man, or Doctor Strange, who she deemed a more qualified doctor than my dad. She didn't expect to find anything more than the fight scene she found so boring. But when she walked into the world of that television, she found a brown girl suiting up to save the day, with a scarf draping off of her shoulders, and an English accent when she spoke Urdu, just like mine. And that's when she said it. Oh my gosh, she looks like you. Miss Marvel was the first time I had felt the validation of seeing myself on screen. Just to be clear, I am nowhere near as awesome as Iman Vellani. But the specific texture of her hair, the American Desi mix of culture she portrayed so perfectly, and even the scene where she was the only one wearing a full covering gym uniform, hit so close to home. She wasn't the nerdy, fresh off the boat trope, and she wasn't the whitewashed culture hater that shows nowadays disguised as representation. She was both, and she was neither. She was me. But there was something much bigger than how I felt myself, seeing myself as a superhero that day. It was how she challenged years of poor representation that minorities are supposed to accept as good enough. At least we made it so far. The satisfaction trap. It challenged the dozens of villainous Muslims that viewers like me had to sit through on screen, being grateful that we had made it to Hollywood at all. In essence, the media has done extreme damage with its social influence by creating monoliths where there are spectrums, easy joke material where there is depth, and villains where there are nuanced people. As Eric Arias explains in an article from the Cambridge University Press, in an age where media outlets have become drivers of public and political opinion, it is crucial that we address and improve these depictions. So let's talk about why media conglomerates poorly represent certain groups, and then zoom into how this narrow-minded representation harms said groups before finally discovering how we can counter these satisfaction traps with good constructive depictions. Media companies love playing with the same tropes over and over again, because why not? Familiarity is easy money in showbiz. When you get to the heart of it, all the biased, bigoted, brazen aspects of film are really one large reflection of its audience. As Muhammad Zahir highlights in BBC News on June 19, 2019, Hollywood has long relied on catering to the prejudices of audiences. And post 9/11, this meant targeting Muslims as threats. As much as it sucks to think about, a core reason as to why the media has pushed minority groups into boxes of one-dimensional coverage is because of the way you respond to it. Whether that's with support or worse, indifference. The relationship the media has with public opinion doesn't just go that way either. It's cyclic. Around the turn of the century, when mass media was really starting to boom, Christine A. Oswald wrote in her article, Mass Media and the Transformation of American Politics, that everything we see on screen is carefully curated by political agendas. While we pick up our remote controls, we fall ignorant to mass corporation control. Conglomerates with political alignments can exacerbate certain public views for selfish campaign bases. We saw this explosively with the weaponizing of Islamophobia under huge Make America Great Again campaigns, where news outlets and shows combined to exacerbate a bad opinion of Muslims. When these agendas find reception in viewers, a vicious relationship emerges. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Folks, let's give it up for our orators.
Woo!
Put it up. For those of you that don't know about oratory, just so you know, they wrote that like themselves this week in the last 4 days. So super, super impressive. Really well done. I want to welcome to the stage our next category. Mfan, the floor is yours to introduce SPAR Debate.
Hi, everyone. So we are a small again, but mighty team, actually a twin power duo with SPAR Debate. So I'll be introducing our two amazing SPAR debaters, Sopriye and Oralolia.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Sopriye, or short Soapy, and I'm going to tell you a bit about SPAR before we start. So SPAR means spontaneous argumentation. And what makes SPAR so interesting that it's using little or no research and debate as the topic is given during the tournament. So no internet is allowed, no textbook or no research before that day. So the topics in SPARs are normally non-academic and require no research. So it could be pepperoni is your favorite pizza, or, you know, shopping in smalls are better than shopping online, something like that. So you're using what's up here. So we're excited to show you what this around the SPAR would look like.
And with that, our topic that we are going to debate on today is Tom Holland is the better Spider-Man. And we have here our debaters, Lolia arguing for the neg and Sopriye arguing for the ab. So in light of our time, we would only have 2 minutes of prep, but in respect to the time that we have, we would just jump right into our arguments. So we will now begin to hear our speech from the ab side for 2 minutes. I will start on your first word.
Tom Holland has dominated the Marvel Cinematic Universe since 2015, and I believe he's the best Spider-Man out there. Let me tell you why. He fits the role the best. He's the youngest. He started when he was 19, and that really fits with Peter Parker and Spider-Man's agenda because they're supposed to be high schoolers. He's athletic and nerdy mixed together, and that fits both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And guess what? He does his own stunts. Secondly, he gets along with his co-stars. He has formed really good relationships with Robert Downey Jr., who plays Iron Man, Jacob Batalon, who plays Ned, and of course, Zendaya, who plays MJ, and has good chemistry with all of them. Thirdly, Tom's Spidey trilogy are the best. He's connected to the Avengers, for saying. The CGI is better, and Tom's suit is undoubtedly the best we've ever seen. Lastly, his passion for the whole play is just unmatched. He loved Spider-Man since he was a young child, and he even said in an interview how he wants to play Spider-Man when he grows up. And obviously that came to pass. To conclude, he has hit the interest and hearts of fans around the country and even the world.
Thank you so much, Sopriye, for that speech. We'll now be hearing our negative speaker speaking for 2 minutes. I'll start on your first word.
Tom Holland is in fact not the best Spider-Man. Believe it or not, Andrew Garfield is far better. Tom Holland may have even been the worst out of all three of them. Tom Holland's Spider-Man completely omits the background of what really made Peter Parker Spider-Man. How about when Ben Parker died? Why was that not in the movie for Tom Holland's Spider-Man? Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, this was the arc for them becoming Spider-Man. Where was that in Tom Holland's movie? Secondly, Peter Parker's personality for being comedic and sarcastic was perfectly portrayed with Andrew Garfield, compared to Tom Holland, who couldn't really hit the spot for that specific trait that Peter Parker has. I feel like that was a major flaw concerning that. Lastly, and I think most importantly, Spider-Man is supposed to be brave and confident, particularly very different from Peter Parker. But Tom Holland's Spider-Man couldn't just do that. Spider-Man in Tom Holland's world is very shy and nervous, and that's not how the Spider-Man we know from the comics is supposed to be. So in conclusion, I think what makes a great Spider-Man is their portrayal of the brilliant original idea of Stan Lee's superhero. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, in the typical Spider debate, we have 4 minutes of questions, so they'll just briefly ask each other questions at this time. You may ask each other questions.
Do you think their love interest affects who's the better Spider-Man?
Yeah, kind of, because the love interest has a major role in the Spider-Man story, especially because this MJ in Tom Holland's story is Zendaya, and who doesn't love Zendaya? She's a unique MJ that we haven't seen before, and I think that's a brilliant addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You said something about Ben not being in the Tom Holland Spider-Mans. Do you think that's a problem, and why?
I do think that's a problem. It didn't even have to be Ben. There was just no arc for Tom Holland's Spider-Man to become Spider-Man. We don't know what his drive was. We don't know what pushed him to become the Spider-Man. And I think that's a very inspirational part of the movie. You know, the drive, what made them to be who they're supposed to be, what made them to be who they are.
Another question I have is, Andrew and Toby, they were almost 30 when they played Spider-Man. So, and I think that kind of affected things. Do you think it did affect like their role in the Spider-Man, who's supposed to be a high schooler, by the way?
I don't think it affected it at all. I think since they were way older, the writers made those Spider-Mans a lot more mature, if you think about it, than Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Tom Holland's Spider-Man was made to be a bit, immature, and I think that really doesn't portray the original Spider-Man. I do got another question for you. What does the connection he had with the Avengers have to do with him being a better superhero?
The Avengers is a key superhero team in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the fact that he's one of them just improves his storyline because he's also in Avengers movies. So not just the trilogy that he's in, he's also played a role in the Avenger movies. And of course, millions of people watch both his movies and the Avenger movies. So that's attracting more fans and attracting more interest because it's different from the original Spider-Mans because they're not one of the Avengers.
Thank you so much. We now reserve the remaining time of questions. Now moving on to our closing, which will be our rebuttal. So both sides will normally give their rebuttal and explain why their side deserves the point. So now we'll be hearing our F rebuttal for 1 minute, please.
My opponent thinks that because Tom Holland's Spider-Man doesn't stick with the original, that makes it a bit worse than the others. And I completely disagree with that. There's a time for change, there's a time for improvement. And I think Tom Holland's Spider-Man did just that. His suits improved. He's part of the Avengers. He improved, the Spider-Man improved in every way. And because Ben Parker isn't the one that died in it, I don't think that changes anything because he lost Aunt May. He lost Iron Man, for God's sake. Nobody talks about that enough. Tom Holland went through struggles as well. And I think that's all part of being Spider-Man. So he's as good as a Spider-Man as Toby and Andrew, or even better, because he has over 20 million fans on Instagram, because it's not just me that's part of his fan base. Millions of people out there agree with what I'm saying too, because he is truly the best.
Thank you so much. You'll now be hearing from our neg rebuttal, please, for 1 minute.
I still believe that, the arc was a very important factor of the Spider-Man movies. My opponent, she thinks that because Aunt May died, that counts. That was after he became Spider-Man. We're talking about what made him who he is today. I think that's a very important factor. And I asked my opponent before if she thinks her Spider-Man's love interest affects, Spider-Man. I agree about that too. But Andrew Garfield had the best and most active love interest out of all of them. So I think that's a factor that also makes Andrew far better than Peter. Andrew's MJ, which was Gwen Stacy, she had her own personality. She wasn't just revolved around Peter. She had something going for her as well, which also drives Peter, Andrew Garfield. And I think that's a very important factor that Andrew always beat the rest with. And I don't think age range mattered. It didn't matter at all. And I feel like, the others were a bit more mature and knew more what they were doing compared to, Tom Holland Spider-Man. So in conclusion, I think Tom Holland is not the best Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield is far better. Tom Holland may even be the worst. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Folks, they just did it off the top of their heads. They had no prep. Did you see that whole debate they did? That was phenomenal. Give it up for our two Spar twins and their coach. So proud of you both. That's amazing. All right, we're gonna welcome next. It looks like we got middle school Congress and middle school extemp with 5 minutes each. So TLT, if you could just give the halfway point for middle school. Sorry, this is a mistake. I apologize. For our novice Congress, and then a 5 minute, a halfway point for our middle school extempers. That would be great. So let's let Galli and Andrea introduce our novice Congress folks first.
Hello there. So I'm Galli, as you can see from the name on the screen, sadly having some tech issues, so I can't show my face, but I'm smiling behind the screen because we've had a great practice round today and the kids showed off all that they could learn. And Andrea is now going to introduce herself, and she's been obviously an amazing colleague to help the kids learn as much as they did in such a short amount of time.
Hi, I'm Andrea, and I'm the other half of Congress coaching at BDL this week. I just wanted to say really quickly, we're so super proud of everything our newbies to Congress have done, and a lot of their first exposures to Congress and just debate in general have happened in the last 2 weeks. So anything you see in the next few minutes happened this week. So it's absolutely incredible. So first, what we're going to do is 2-minute speeches and then 1 minute of questioning after.
So what we have, what we're introducing right now are novice Congress individuals. They've had some debate experience, but they've never done Congress before specifically. So the bill that they had to work with this week was basically getting a tax credit for recycling oyster shells. At the end of our showcase today, you'll see our returning senators go into a more in-depth Congress round. But right now I'm going to introduce one of our novice senators who wants to deliver their speech. Anad, the floor is yours. Feel free to read your whole speech.
Okay, so since it was founded in 2014, the Billion Oyster Project has already restored 75 million oysters and over 8 acres of reef area in the New York Harbor. The founders, Murray Fisher and Pete Malinowski, envisioned a healthy, biodiverse New York Harbor. Hello, my name is Anand, and today I am on the affirmative side of this legislation. My first reason for supporting the affirmative is that New York Harbor needs a more abundant ecosystem, and oysters help with that. The Billion Oyster Project says that oyster reefs provide habitats for hundreds of species, end quote. The oyster reefs create habitats and therefore create room for a more biodiverse ecosystem. Furthermore, the senior director of programs at the Billion Oyster Project, Katie Mosher, says, we need to collaborate to develop best practices and targets for installing large-scale oyster reefs. If we all make it a priority to restore oyster reef habitats, to restore oyster reef habitat that is effectively protected from harvest, New York Harbor can become the thriving ecosystem it once was. End quote. The article, What is Aquatic Biodiversity? Why is it important? By Louis A. Helfrich and others, states that sustaining biodiversity is essential to the health of our environment and to the quality of human life. End quote. Thus, the biodiversity of bodies of water, such as the New York Harbor, is very important to the quality of life for humans and animals alike. In summary, biodiversity, as well as the maintenance of oyster reefs, are vital to New York Harbor having a more abundant ecosystem. My second reason for supporting the affirmative is that this legislation could help business owners save money because of the offered tax cut and the fact that locally sourced oysters could cost less. This legislation says that for every pound of oyster shells recycled, the restaurant will be provided a tax credit of 10 cents, with a maximum of $1,000 per tax year. Even if the maximum is reached, $1,000 in tax saved can be a big aid to business owners. According to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the cost or fee of importing goods can range from about $3 to about $10. While this might seem like an insubstantial amount at first, this cost will stack up even for a small business. Buying locally has no fee. This logic also applies for oysters, which is why buying them locally aids businesses in being cost efficient. This legislation will aid business owners, large and small, to save money with tax cuts and letting them save money with locally sourced oysters.
Thank you so much, Anad, for that speech. Do we have any questions from our novice senators? Alice, feel free if you want to ask a question.
So I want to ask you, the business owner, you say that, they will save money with tax credit, but is there any benefits in the economic growth? Or anything that benefits our economic?
Yeah, because when businesses thrive, the economy thrives with them.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that question, Alice, and for that response, Anad. Do we have any other questioners from any of our novice senators? Seeing a lack of other questions, I'm now going to pass the floor to Alice, who's another one of our novice senators who has also prepared a speech for this week. Great job, Anad. Alice, the floor is yours.
Hi, and my name is Alice. I affirm the bill to offer a tax credit for recycled oyster shells to help restore oyster reefs. The natural world is changing, and we're totally dependent on that world. It provides our food, water, and air. It's the most precious thing we have, and we need to defend it. And I believe that the Billion Oyster Project can help us with saving our environment and also the economy, which I will prove during my debate speech. So, the Billion Oyster Project can help us only if there are enough people to do this. It's a fact that nothing comes without the cost of money, so if the government wants to benefit the country in the long term, they must have tax credit for the restaurants that recycled oyster shells, which encourage more restaurants to do the same. With that taken into action, we can gain much more benefits. So, oysters, it can boost up our economy. According to the Natural History Museum, pearl making is the natural defense against the irritants or parasites entering the oyster shells. A singular oyster can cost anywhere from $1 to $3. So, the typical price range of oyster pearls can range anywhere from $20 to $5,000 or more per pearl based on various factors. So you can see that oyster won't cost much, but the price of the pearl is much higher. In cooperations with TSAC's parks and wildlife biologists, the oyster shells are returned to oyster reefs to keep the reef healthy and supplies oyster for the future. Without recycling, the shell will be thrown away, and the oyster reef will not be able to regenerate new oyster. So by recycling oyster shells, we can have more healthy oyster, which means that we can have pearls and oyster become nutritious food. And also the job of diving to search for oyster is required.
which can create more jobs, leads to more economic growth. So yeah, that's all for my speech. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Alice, for pulling through and delivering that speech. I know you told me I had a sore throat, so thank you so much for showcasing all of the hard work you put into that speech this week. And knowing that you have a sore throat, I'm not going to make you answer all of the questions that I know you can answer. And Andrea and I are so proud of all of our novice individuals, because even if they did not want to speak today, they helped contribute with helping our lessons run as smoothly as possible. And you made sure that your colleague and your co-senators had strong speeches and strong questioning and answering skills. So great job to all of our novice senators that have learned something new this week. And I hope you go have some oysters, because you learned a lot about them. So maybe go have a couple and enjoy.
Nice job to all of our novice Congress folks. That was terrific. Let's go ahead and welcome to the stage now, Middle School Public Forum. I want to introduce you to our middle school PF coaches, Will Kay and Kayla Graham.
Hey, everybody. So we're super excited for you to hear from our middle school public forum debaters. They will be presenting cases and crossfires on the resolution. Resolve, the United States government should substantially increase its investment in high-speed rails. So without further ado, Walter is going to read you the pro case.
Should it go now?
Yep, jump in, Walter.
So, wait, am I doing pro or con?
You're doing pro.
Okay, so my first contention is the environmental impacts of HSR. HSR benefits the environment significantly and is something we need to adopt if we are going to save the planet. Kleins states, transportation is the single largest source of carbon causing climate change. The American transportation system is the most inefficient on Earth, which most of the country driving gas-guzzling single-occupant SUVs hundreds of miles a day around sprawling communities, whereas on the other hand, high-speed rail can be zero-carbon transportation. High-speed rail also has the capability of transporting tons more people than a singular car or even dozens of cars for that matter. As stated by Mark Hammond Green, a single HSR train track can carry the same amount of people as a 10-lane highway and a fraction of the cost. High-speed trains should help relieve some of the traffic jams that help anxiety, this helps with emissions because you have tons more people in just a singular vessel. In addition to this, it has the impact of saving nearly $90 billion currently being lost in automotive gridlock yearly. According to World Wireless, HSR also decreases the amount of smog in cities, which has been proven by the WHO or the WHO to increase risk of things such as lung cancer and claim an estimated 7 million lives each year. Finally, according to the Environmental Law and Policy Center, high-speed trains in the Midwest would be 3 times the energy efficient as cars and 6 times energy efficient as planes. So choosing rail travel over driving or flying will decrease our dependence on foreign oil and reduce air pollution that causes global warming and harms public health. Currently, major portions of the Midwest suffer from severe smog problems. According to federal regulators, the construction of high-speed rail will decrease the region's reliance on automotive transportation and therefore help reduce ozone emissions. The impact of all of this is drastically increased quality for life of all those who are living currently in heavily smog-polluted areas. As HSR will elevate the problem, it will also increase their health. There's also an impact on the Earth because it will reduce CO2 emissions drastically and be a huge force in saving our planet. And finally, the monetary impact of a decrease of traffic gridlock. My second contention is HSR is more cost efficient. Every $1 invested creates $4 in economic benefits. Upgrading passenger operations on newly revitalized tracks, bridges, and rights of way and spurring business productivity along corridors. The rail service will connect America's economically vital mega regions and help keep them mobile, productive, efficient, and internationally competitive. High-speed rail has proven to be an engine of economic development, resulting in the immediate job creation, not only to the construction of the rails and related infrastructure, and stations. High-speed rail also stimulates long-term economic benefits generally and job growth, specifically from commercial, residential, and industrial developments that spring up along rail lines. In addition, the addition of high-speed rail can be a boon to tourism. While many airports, by necessary, are located far from the city center, it's possible high-speed rail to run right into the heart of the city's downtown, with stations located near cultural amenities, restaurants, hotels, and shopping. Finally, high-speed rail creates thousands of jobs for professionals with construction, engineering, and urban planning backgrounds. It further opens the door to tourism and maintenance jobs. This leads to tens of thousands, if not more, people to be employed and able to provide themselves and their families. Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you, Walter. Now we'll hear from Pavan with his con case.
My partner and I are the negative of the following resolved. The United States federal government should increase its investment in high-speed railways. Contention 1. High-speed rails are not worth the exorbitant cost. California has spent more than $100 million per route mile on flatland, with the latest predictions saying that the entire 520-mile route will cost $100 billion. At these rates, Obama's original plan would cost well over $1 trillion, and the United States High-Speed Rail Association's plan would need well over $3 trillion. Costs for high-speed rails are also often much higher than the originally predicted value. In 1999, the 520-mile Los Angeles-San Francisco line was estimated to cost $25 billion, but the most recent prediction is $100 billion. These costs have increased dramatically. Once built, high-speed rails will cost billions of dollars to maintain. Capital renewal requirements include the replacement of rails and train sets as frequently as every 10 years. Transit agencies in the U.S. currently have a $176 billion maintenance backlog, most of which comes from rail infrastructure. If the U.S. cannot maintain urban rail systems, it's unlikely to maintain an even more expensive high-speed rail system. If it's built and we do not maintain it, it will fall into disrepair and become unusable. California is also unlikely to finish its rail system, wasting tens of billions of dollars. The reason for this is simple. California consistently ranks in the top 10 highest U.S. states for real estate costs, and real estate is necessary to build the rail. There are stretches of land in California that are needed for the rail to be complete, and the owners of this land can sell it for however much they want because the rail needs to pass through the land. If these rails are built, they will waste hundreds of billions of dollars, impacting the lives of millions of people since these rails will most likely be built with tax money. Tax money could be better spent on improving schools and roads that would be helpful instead of building the high-speed rail system. Contention 2, ridership. All pros of high-speed rails assume that people will ride them, which will most likely not happen. Randall O'Toole predicts that high-speed rails will carry less than 2% in passenger miles and no freight. According to Clean Technisha, a ride between San Francisco and Los Angeles is predicted to cost $105 one way when riding high-speed rail, while a plane has a starting cost of $99. This, combined with the fact that it's faster to take the plane, will make people prefer to take a plane. The current predicted cost to take the high-speed rail is more than double the price advertised by the California High-Speed Rail Authority in 2008, and prices are expected to keep increasing. So far, billions of dollars have been spent, and assuming it's paid for with tax dollars, the people spending it will most likely not use it. It's clear that there's no incentive to take the high-speed rail, and in fact, there's an incentive not to take it. Because of this, the project is likely to never repay itself and instead keep preventing tax dollars from helping the public. Contention 3. High-speed rails destroy communities due to eminent domain. Eminent domain is the right of a government or its agent to expropriate private property for public use with payments of compensation, which is usually not substantial enough to cover the cost of buying new land. As stated by an article from ENR Texas and Louisiana, land acquisition for a proposed $30 billion high-speed railroad between Houston and Dallas can continue after the Supreme Court of Texas said that the company developing the project has eminent domain authority. This means that the owners of the land in Texas can be forced to sell it for prices that aren't usually decided by them. The impact is economic injustice. This is just one example of the misuse of eminent domain. An article from Spotlight on Poverty and Opportunity stated that most of the people displaced by eminent domain were left even worse off than they were before, and takings still disproportionately occur in poor and minority neighborhoods, and still inflict great harm on both their victims and on the surrounding communities. Given the expanse of high-speed rail plans in the US, the impact of eminent domain could be felt by millions of Americans, leaving them in financial and social ruin.
Thank you, Pavan. We'll now have a brief crossfire between Anika on the con and Adrian on the pro. Adrian, you'll ask the first question since you're con.
Okay. So
Pro, I'm sorry.
yeah, okay. So my question for you is, what warrant do you have to believe that the company, the Texas company that is building the HSR will misuse eminent domain?
Can you repeat that question?
What warrant do you have that would make that suggests you should believe that the company in Texas will misuse eminent domain?
Well, because eminent domain is a very big cause, and also you should believe it because there has been a lot of other we should believe it because eminent domain is a big problem and issue if we build high-speed rails. Can I ask another question to you, or?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are many other types of transportation systems in order to get to a location. Why would you specifically choose high-speed rails?
Well, I think we've pretty much illustrated throughout our speech why you would do that. It's because it's like a more carbon friendly, less environmentally hurtful, and also incredibly fast mode of transportation. So my question for you is that if there is no ridership in that to be found in HSR, how do you account for the extreme amount of ridership in other countries that have implemented HSR, such as China's 1.8 billion people who rode HSR in just the first 4 years of it being up?
Can you elaborate on that?
I don't think we're going to have time for an elaboration, but thank you to middle school PF and thanks to everybody else for listening.
Let's do a round of applause for middle school PFers. Awesome job. All right. And hey, speaking of high-speed rail, folks, let's hear a little bit more about it from our high school PFers. So I want to welcome to our stage Eddie and Cynthia to introduce high school PF.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Eddie. I'm one of the high school PF coaches. And I know after 10 minutes of hearing high-speed rail, you're just dying to hear some more. So we're going to have our brilliant PFers give 2 partial cases on high-speed rail, and then we'll have 2 other debaters do a crossfire about it. So let's start with Rosanna, who's going to be giving the affirmative case.
Hello, my name is Rosanna, and we affirm resolved. The United States federal government should substantially increase its investments in high-speed rail. Contention number 1 is high-speed rail will create 4,000 more jobs. The U.S. economy is going downhill. From the WashingtonPost.com, long 2021 explains that the official number of unemployed Americans is 10.1 million. According to the Global Railway Review 2020, California high-speed rail project has created more than 4,000 construction jobs. This was just from one project. Imagine having more high-speed rail projects and how many more jobs it would create besides construction workers. Fortunately, HSR alters this course of the economy. Subpoint A is the construction jobs. Jobs will be created if the government invests in high-speed rail. With high-speed rail, those who specialize in engineering and work in the steel industry will have jobs open for them to think about. According to apta.com, in 2022, investing in high-speed rail creates jobs. Building high-speed rail creates hundreds of thousands of jobs. Every $1 billion in investments creates 24,000 jobs. Another study, according to Georgetown University, U.S. High-Speed Rail Association, investments in infrastructure would create 11 million new American jobs over the 10 years. So investing in high-speed rail leads to economic growth. Also, according to Call Matters 2022, the initial plan said that the project would cost about $33 billion. Limited services would begin by 2025, and the system would be complete by 2030. Therefore, by increasing the government's investments in high-speed rail, there would be more job opportunities. The impact is keeping people out of poverty. Center of Poverty and Social Policy, Columbia University, March 2022. January 2022, child poverty rates increased sharply. Monthly child poverty is 4.6%, higher than February 2022 and December 2021, representing 3.4 million additional children in poverty in February relative to December. High-speed rail would bring people out of poverty because of the many jobs it would create. Subpoint B's efficiency. According to theatlantic.com by Joe Pickinster, 2014, 50 years ago this month, Japan's bullet trains completed their first trips and were welcomed by hundreds of people who had waited overnight in the terminals. The new high-speed rail connected two massive economic hubs, Tokyo and Osaka. Therefore, high-speed rail is beneficial to our environment and decreases the poverty rate. Vote affirmative. Thank you.
All right, that was awesome. Now we're going to hear from Samantha, who's going to read the negative side of the resolution.
All right. So, contention 1 is our budget. The United States is heading for its second recession in 2 years. According to Behavioral in 2022 of the Washington Post, writes that current GDP is shrinking by nearly 4%. Moreover, they further say that there is a decline in wages. Hodge of the International Monetary Fund explained last month that disastrously high inflation rates combined with this decline in GDP are catastrophic for the United States. Thus, McKinney of Reuters concludes that the United States unemployment rate is about to rise for the worst. With that in mind, let's evaluate the cost of high-speed rail. According to O'Toole in 2022 of the Cato Institute, states to make the United States a world leader in high-speed rail will cost more than $4 trillion. The United States can finance this in one of two ways. Subpoint A is deficit spending. O'Toole of the Cato Institute continues to say that the $4 trillion spending would add to the federal debt for construction of new trails and rail lines, plus tens of billions of dollars of annual deficit spending to stabilize operating costs. This has happened before. According to the California High-Speed Rail Association finds that in 2008, California voters agreed to allow the state's high-speed rail authority to sell $9 billion worth of bonds without identifying any source of revenues to repay those bonds. On an even larger scale, like national high-speed rail, this would raise debt, which could worsen inflation, crippling the economy. Historically, raising debt was damaging the economy. In the aftermath of the 2020 recession, according to Castro in 2021, finds that the debt jumped from 327% of GDP to almost 400%. Problematically, this adds more stress to the economy. According to Hamburger in 2021, finds in the media analysis of the public debt that the COVID relief program decreased economic growth by over $20 billion. Thus, with a 14.4% of poverty rate and millions of poverty, the United States can't afford to raise trillions in debt, knowing it would push millions more into poverty. Subpoint B is cuts to social spending. One of the other ways to finance high-speed railroad is through cuts to social spending. This has happened before. Specifically, according to Ersa Klein of Vox in 2018, writes that the Senate has used the explosion of the deficit to justify sweeping cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and prioritizing debts. Ensure that they see this through. This is disastrous, and the International Monetary Fund found that social spending plays an essential role in protecting vulnerable groups, supporting social and political stability, addressing inequalities of both income and opportunity, smoothing consumption over the life cycle, and stabilizing demand in the face of economic shocks. Moreover, according to Wolski in 2019, finds that countries that spend more on social services tend to spend more on healthcare, adjusting for poverty and unemployment rates and the population proportion of older people than age 65. And they continue that an estimated 59 million Americans receive welfare during an average month. The number is equivalent to 19% of the population in the United States and includes individuals who receive assistance from one of the safety net programs. Thus, vote neg. Thank you.
All right, that was an awesome job from Samantha, who wrote that case this week. So now I know you're wondering, well, what are some questions about this case? Which is why we're going to have Jacqueline and Cass ask each other questions. Jacqueline's going to ask the first question because she's on the affirmative.
Okay. Oh, Cass, are you ready? Okay. How did you get the number $4 trillion for the total amount of HSR, total amount that HSR would be? And did you know that the person who wrote that number was fired for making it an unreliable source?
Okay, so the number was taken from our old tool card. And while he may have been fired, the part that we're like referring to was actually a quote that was already calculated from California's HSR company. He was simply just quoting it. So that quote itself is credible. What he says following that isn't. The quote specifies that it took Cali $100 million to build one singular rail on flat land. And if we kept those prices up and attempted to build land across the nation, the US HR would need over $3 trillion. How much would a riding fee cost on a high-speed rail?
So this would vary depending on where you're planning to go, and also like when you book it. Like many markets, this will rely on supply and demand.
Okay, so if we don't know how much the riding fees are, how can we calculate whether or not people actually board a high-speed rail?
Well, it's unrealistic to calculate a price before it's actually built, but we do know that Americans are interested in high-speed rail because in an earlier survey done by the American Public Transport Association of 25,000 Americans, it indicates that if it was available, about 60% would probably or definitely use it.
Okay, so 1.2 million people ride buses, 276 million use cars for transportation. How is testing only 25,000 people substantial enough to prove that?
Well, it's a survey, which is why the ratio is really important, and it proves that more than half of the Americans are willing to at least give it a try. My next question is, are you aware that the Senate is currently democratically skewed? With current elections coming up, do you think that they would consider cutting social spending?
So the Democrats and the status quo are already in support of building HSR and are looking to sacrifice anything to make sure it's built. And extending our Vox 18 card, since social spending has been cut before, voters are not going to be surprised by something that's already happened. They will predict it, and it's not going to interfere with their campaign. There's many other things that interfere with it, like examples could be Roe v. Wade and other instances. Where would we install these rails? Are we clearing forests? Are we clearing hills? Are we clearing entire cities to build them? Where?
These rails are supposed to connect like major cities, so they could be built alongside or even above current road systems.
Okay, and so if they're built alongside current road systems, why would people feel the need to board HSR?
HSR has a lot of benefits, which include helping with congestion, and furthermore, these high-speed rails are a lot faster and more eco-friendly than if you were to take a car.
And that's time for me. I don't know if my timer's like off by a few seconds or.
All right, everyone, please give a hand for our awesome, fantastic debaters. That was one of the best crossfires I've seen in my 4 years competing. So we should be really proud of all of them.
Big congratulations to all of our high school PFers. That was so good. All right, and folks, at this point, we're near the halfway point of our showcase. Y'all have been excellent so far, but don't go anywhere because there's more good stuff to come. We're going to take a 10-minute break to let you just take a Zoom break, get a snack, stretch your legs. We will see you in 10 minutes. Feel free to turn your cameras off and step away from Zoom. All right, welcome back everybody to part 2 of our BDL showcase. If you could please make sure your camera is on so we can see your smiling faces and that your mic is off so that we can hear our speakers. We're going to, oops, not yet. We'll get back there, I promise. We're going to pick it up with Extemp. I would like to welcome our Extemp coaches, Kevin and Casey, to the stage.
Hey everyone. So we have 2 extempers for you today. For those of you who aren't familiar with Extemp, you basically go into it kind of blind. You have 30 minutes to research a current events question and prepare a approximately 7-minute speech on it. So of course these weren't done right on the spot because we've been watching everyone's speeches, but these were prepared yesterday using that same format. So it's really impressive what they were able to come up with in those 30 minutes. So first, we'll be having Daniel speak, answering his question with part of his intro, or part of his speech, the intro. What steps should Joe Biden take to win the presidency in 2024? And just so everyone knows, Daniel had like almost no experience with Extemp going into this week, which makes everything he's done so much more impressive. So yeah, Daniel, take the stage.
Okay. Joe Biden had some horrible slip-ups, like saying that he had the attitude of the great Negro, or he's fallen multiple times out of like an airplane while it's on the ground. But he's not only slipped up during these times, he's also slipped up during being president. He's facing record high inflation, a turbulent political and media environment, and deep frustration within his party over its inability to protect abortion rights and take action on climate change. The midterm election is fast approaching, and Democrats do not want Joe Biden to represent them, which leads us to today's question. What steps should Joe Biden take to win in 2024? The steps Joe Biden should take are: he needs to be more involved in different movements Democrats support. He has to try to better the U.S. economy by finding solutions to reduce inflation. And he needs to better his reputation as the stereotypical old man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. Next, we'll have Joseph giving part of his speech on the question, how can the Federal Reserve address rising inflation? So Joseph, take it away.
All right. Okay. Have you ever heard of the Federal Reserve? Well, if you haven't, it is actually as professional as it sounds. The Federal Reserve handles everything, mainly from the economic point of view. They mainly handle interest rates and prevent inflation from getting too high or too low. So as a result, the Federal Reserve is actually very important in today's sort of stance, especially with the Russo-Ukrainian war and the COVID-19 still haunting us from the past. With last year making us sedentary and dormant, not only has the economy inflated, so have our bellies. And so the Federal Reserve has to address this rising inflation, as there is a low amount of supply and a lot of money coming in. And so therefore the value of money is very low. So what can the Federal Reserve do to address this rising inflation? It's simple. The Federal Reserve can simply control interest rates, as well as how the money flows, by controlling wage/prices, by controlling how banks lend each other money, and by directly increasing or decreasing the amount of interest rates. So off to my first reason. The Federal Reserve can act when prices influence money supply that causes inflation. According to the New York Times on July 29th of this year, the Federal Reserve is known for controlling how money is going in and out, and as well as how prices rise and lower. You see, with inflation, consumer prices have went up, and as a result, people have to be paying more money out of their pocket while getting less out of their own paycheck. So, according to Bloomberg, on July 27th of this year, the Federal Reserve might not actually handle the economy as well, some people may argue. Well, it's because the economy needs to slow down. With this high amount of inflation and this much interest rate, it is really nerve-wracking for the average American citizen to be seeing a lot of money go out of their allowance, a lot of out-of-pocket costs, and as a result, we have to see a sort of min-max. You see, according to American Progress on July 13th of this year, the Federal Reserve must just find a nice, good balance as to how it handles the economy. Because if the Federal Reserve does not act well enough, we can see high inflation start to devastate our economy, much as it devastates the economy of a country such as Sri Lanka or Venezuela, with their inflation rising more than 2,000%. We would not want to be in that situation. So to my second point, which is the fact that the Federal Reserve can control banks. You see, to give you a little bit of background, the Federal Reserve, in fact, controls the central bank, which is basically the banks of all banks. It is basically the government bank which controls who gets what and how much. Without the Federal Reserve, you would not be getting a paycheck right now. So, according to an article made by the Federal Reserve itself on May 24th of this year, the Federal Reserve is responsible for overlooking all central banks. And so with that in mind, what can the Federal Reserve do? People argue that the Federal Reserve cannot do anything. In fact, according to Time magazine on May 4th of this year, the Federal Reserve cannot fix our broken bank economy. As a result, people have had a very low stature of the Federal Reserve, and therefore they do not see the Federal Reserve as something that they can trust. Because after all, what happened in the 2007 to 2009 crisis when almost all banks had collapsed and people were losing money inside of their banks? Well, simple. The Federal Reserve actually fixed that problem. According to Brookings.edu, on December 12th of last year, the Federal Reserve actually did fix the 2007-2009 crisis, which, in case you were wondering, was basically when the housing market had very low interest rates. Because of the very low interest rates, people were borrowing a lot of money from the banks. When people borrowed a lot of money from the banks basically had almost near to no money. So when it came time to paying off that money to the banks, people almost had no money because of the fact that they just bought a house, and the banks themselves had to pay off the loans that they paid from other banks. You see where I'm going with this? Almost all the banks had collapsed, and therefore the Federal Reserve had to act, and they in fact did enact policies which helped the inflation go back to normal again. And despite the fact that we had lost all of those banks, it's luckily not something that we have to deal with to this day, thanks to the Federal Reserve. And so to my final contention, the Federal Reserve can just control interest rates directly. According to an article made by Bankrate.com on July 27th of this year, inflation was 9.1% higher than any other annual rate since 4 decades, 40 years. So basically, inflation has risen so high that the Federal Reserve basically has to do something, because what else are they supposed to do? They're the ones that control the banks. They're the ones that control the flow of money. What did they do? Well, thing is, they could in fact just increase the interest rates. There's a bit of a catch though. According to Forbes of June 16th, there are people that argue that people cannot afford higher investment rates. You see, as aforementioned, people cannot afford to pay off their loans because of the fact that they had lost their jobs, lost their money, and so they cannot afford it. But luckily for you, there's a solution, because the Federal Reserve always had a solution. According to Chicago Fed of October 2nd of last year, basically the Federal Reserve was known for helping to finance war debt created by the United States government. Ever since World War II, with Europe going into complete and utter chaos, the United States had to jump in to help support. And as a result of losing men, supply, equipment, etc., the US needed money to loan. And so they took money from the banks, they loaned it themselves, and then they had to pay it off. So as a result of all of this loaning and lending, the Federal Reserve had to increase the interest rates, but just temporarily, because they know that the US government will have to pay it off. As a result, the baby boom had happened where a large percentage of the population, the world population, it is responsible for the reason as to why we have more than 9 billion people in the world to this day. And it is thanks to the Federal Reserve that the United States population had increased. Well, it's part of the reason. And so with all of that in mind, we have to thank the Federal Reserve for all three reasons. For controlling how money flows, for controlling how banks lend each other money, and by controlling interest rates in a moderate way. And so in a way, the Federal Reserve is our saving grace by helping us in this time of dire need, and with inflation rising and with a tyrant in Eastern Europe causing all of this inflation, we can rest assured that the Federal Reserve is looking out there for us because they're for us. All right, thank you.
Let's give it up for Extemp, folks. That was fantastic. Thank you to our Extempers. I'm now excited to welcome to the stage our declamation coaches, Katie and Addison. Is that Aaliyah? Aaliyah was working with you this week. Katie and Aaliyah. Sorry, I got confused because Addison was a tech coach last week. Sorry, Addison. Sorry, Aaliyah. Welcome, Katie and Aaliyah.
Nico, you scared me.
Sorry, Addison.
Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you guys are all enjoying this showcase. This week in declamation, we each picked out speeches and we worked on our introductions. Aaliyah, you can say something too if you want
Yeah.
to.
Hey guys, my name's Aaliyah. So if you guys are not familiar with declamation, pretty much you pick a speech that's already been done, and then you're able to recite it. You make your own introduction, you add your own emphasis to it, and that's what the ladies worked on this week, and I'm very, very proud of them, and now they get to showcase their skills.
Yeah. Our first speaker is Glory.
Stereotyping is a way to make information about someone's appearance that might lead to the wrong view of the person, or an obstacle is simply placed on other people. A label on a picture, or a lot of people believe we can stop racial stereotyping. This is a difficult and upsetting topic. Racial stereotyping is when someone dislike or think something of them because of their race. According to very well known how racial stereotyping affects the world. Racial stereotyping involves a fixed, overly generalized belief about a particular group of people based on their appearance. The truth is, everyone does it due to a mental shortcuts influenced by our racial socialization. Racial socialization is the process of receiving information about the value and perspective of our race from our parents, caregivers, and other influential people. According to the American Psychological Association, racial stereotyping is affected people. Racial stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination reflect on the human's tendency to conceptualize the value of certain configurations of phenotypic features differently and act on these thoughts and feelings in our interaction with members of the racial category.
Thank you so much, Glory. Next up, we have Maggie.
Okay. Family is the most important people in everyone's life. Without family, where would I be? Where would you be? I know, we'd be unhappy. I'd be unhappy if I didn't have family, because who would be there to take care of me? So you have to take care of our family. Take care of our family, because in the future, our family might not be there to take care of us. We need to all have family in our lives. Family is what we need. They need to be by our sides at all times.
This is Family by Tyler Perry. I came out of school one afternoon, and there he was, sitting outside in that lawn chair selling Prairie Line candies. 25 cents, and I saw one of the kids try to buy candy, right? And they gave Mr. Butler and told him that it was a $5 bill. I stepped in and said, "Mr. Butler, this is a scam." Just to say, I had a lot of enemies at that school. But it didn't matter. I was glad to do it. You see, Mr. Butler was one of the first men in my life to see me. And what made it all the more special was that he was blind. He was the point of light. One morning, I was late meeting him, and as I walked up to the intersection, I could see Mr. Butler standing, not saying a word. So I tipped up behind him and said, "I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to wait to see what happens."
Thank you very much, Maggie. Next up, and lastly, but very much not least, we have Kathy.
A long time ago, there lived a giant, a selfish giant, whose stunning garden was the most beautiful in all of the land. But one evening, this giant came home and found all these children playing in his garden, and he became enraged. "My own garden is my own garden," the giant said. Author Oscar Wilde wrote the story of The Selfish Giant in 1888, and now almost 100 years later, that giant moved into my Brooklyn childhood and never left. Way back in elementary school, I was that kid who was too cowardly to raise a hand or to ask a question. So you can imagine that I wasn't very good with English and the spelling of its words or the pronunciation of certain ones. But despite that, I love reading, and most of all, fantasy, because it taught me the art of writing. Every time we communicate and tell a story, we're taken to places we never thought we'd go, introduced to people we never thought we'd meet, and shown worlds that we might have missed. This is What Reading Slowly Taught Me About Writing by Jacqueline Woodson. I was that child with her finger running beneath the words until I was untaught to do this, told big kids don't use their fingers. But in the quiet of my apartment, outside of my teacher's gaze, I let my finger run beneath those words. And that selfish giant again told me his story. How he'd felt betrayed by the children sneaking into his garden, and how he'd built this high wall to keep them out, which worked, but a gray winter fell over his garden and just stayed and stayed. Long before there was cable or the internet or even the telephone, there were people sharing ideas, information, and memory through story. The story of something better than the Nile that sent the Egyptians moving along it, or the story of a better way to preserve the dead that brought King Tut's remains into the 21st century. And more than 2 million years ago, when the first humans began making tools from stone, someone must have said, "What if?" and someone else remembered the story. So as technology continues to speed ahead, I continue to read slowly, to drown out the noise and to remember the selfish giant, how he finally tore that wall down and let the children run free through his garden. And I read slowly to pay tribute to my ancestors, those who have circled fires, speaking softly of their dreams, their hopes, their futures, and those who never learned to read at all. Each time we read, write, or tell a story, we step inside their circle and it remains unbroken.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you to the three of you. I'm very proud of you, and it was such a wonderful time working with all of you guys. Yeah, thanks so much.
Up for declamation. That was so great. Awesome job. All right, I'm excited to welcome to our stage Lincoln Douglas debate, and I want to give the mic over to our LD coach, Sasan.
Hello, can you hear me? Good, good. I am Sasan. I am the LD coach. In LD, we have been learning to debate about healthcare. And we have the world's shortest Lincoln Douglas debate for you today. Lincoln Douglas is a one-on-one debate format, but we wanted to get everyone who did Lincoln Douglas, who is still with us for the showcase, involved. So we're going to have a different student give every speech. Kicking us off is going to be Aram. Aram, are you there? Are you ready to go? I'm getting a maybe vibe. All right, Aram will wait. Oh, I see you. You are here. Can you? Okay, there you are. Are you? Hello. You ready to get started?
Yeah, okay.
Awesome.
Aram, would you mind just adjusting the camera so that we can see your face or standing
Oh.
up? There you go. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Arham, and I negate the resolution that the United States ought to implement a single-payer universal healthcare system. My contention is the economy. One, the economy is barely keeping things together right now with inflation and recession, but things currently look okay.
Aram, this is the negative. You want to read the affirmative. Caught that just in time, buddy. All good. Start over.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I had the wrong again. Okay. Hello, my name is Arham, and I affirm the resolution that the United States ought to implement a single-payer universal healthcare system. My contention is debt from bills. Currently, there is a lot of debt from medical bills. According to Matthew Ray in 2022, medical debt remains a persistent problem. For people and families with limited assets, even a relatively small unexpected medical expense can be unaffordable. For people with significant medical needs, medical debt may build up over time. People living with cancer, for example, have higher levels of debt than individuals who've never had cancer. B. Single-payer healthcare will solve this problem. According to Gustavo Rivera in 2021, people shouldn't face financial obstacles or hardships for cancer treatment, having a baby, or other healthcare. A single-payer healthcare system will guarantee that all, regardless of income or job status, can focus on their health and healthcare, not medical bills. This is important because medical debt actually makes sick people sicker. According to Mandy Pellegrin in 2021, medical debt itself may affect health outcomes, exacerbate already poor health outcomes, and worsen existing health disparities via stress that affects mental health and in some cases prompts riskier health behaviors, reduced use of and access to medical care. The effects of medical debt can be long-lasting. For these reasons, I urge you to vote for the affirmative.
All right. Thank you so much, Aram. I feel like that's something that happens to every LD debater at some point.
I had it before because, like, you know, for my actual like practice, I had the negative one open, but then this one I had to read the affirmative. So I'm sorry.
You recovered great. There's nothing to be sorry about. Next up, we're gonna have our first negative speech from Shannon. Shannon, are you with us? There you are.
Yeah.
So Shannon, why don't you go ahead and introduce the negatives argument in this debate?
Shannon, just same thing. If you could just adjust your camera so we could see your face. There you go. Thank you.
Wait. We're not doing a cross, right?
We're not doing crossfire.
Okay. So I just start with my thing.
Yep. You read the case. Go ahead.
My first contention. Sorry. Hello, my name is Shannon, and I negate the resolution resolved. The United States shouldn't implement a single-payer universal healthcare system. My first contention is the economy. First of all, the economy is barely keeping things together right now due to inflation and a recession, but you know, things are still looking okay. According to Saunders in 2022, although some recent economic data has been strong, the bigger picture is more nuanced. Some leading economic indicators have begun signaling recession. Second of all, single-payer healthcare will be very expensive. According to Bronstein in 2019, a plan similar to what Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders are pushing would require $34 trillion in additional federal spending over its first decade in operation. That's more than the federal government's total cost over the coming decade for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid combined. Third, single-payer healthcare crashing the economy would obviously do a lot of harm. According to Kimberly Amadeo in 2022, if the US economy were to collapse, you would likely lose access to credits. Banks would close, demand would outstrip supply of food, gas, and other necessities. If the collapse affected local governments and utilities, then water and electricity might no longer be available. A US economic collapse would create global panic. Also, according to Amy Gutman in 2014, there's long been substantial evidence linking job loss to shorter lives and more health-related problems. In the year after men lost their jobs in mass layoffs, their chances of dying doubled. The heightened risk still significantly higher 20 years later. I also have another contention, which is that if we were to implement single-payer healthcare system, patients wouldn't get the care they need in time for it to make a difference. According to HuffPost.com, patients have been stuck in ambulances for hours on end. not even being seen by emergency department personnel because there were no beds available to put them in. An 82-year-old Welshman who fell waited 8 hours on the floor after calling medical help before an ambulance was able to get him. And this is a case that happened in a country that implemented a single care healthcare system.
Awesome. And Shannon, I was just wondering real quick while we still have you, do you want to make any quick responses to the affirmatives argument that right now a lot of people have debt because they can't afford their bills and single payer healthcare would fix that?
We'd actually be in even more debt if we implemented single payer healthcare system because the whole economy would collapse, and the economy obviously affects all citizens in the United States, whereas only like a few people have medical debt. So like our situation is like more I don't know.
It's better than that scenario. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Shannon. Next up, we have William. William is giving the middle speech of the debate, which is a very challenging speech, where William's job is to respond to the main arguments that the negation has made, as well as build up the affirmatives argument. So, William, let's start with the negative. There were two main points there. The first main point is that the economy might not be able to handle the cost of single payer healthcare, and that would lead to problems. Do you have any response to this?
Well, the funds of 34 trillion, those would actually be incorporated into this healthcare system piece by piece as to not cause an economic collapse. So it wouldn't overwhelm the economy.
Yeah, great. And there was also this argument about how that would slow down the medical care that people receive. Do you have a reason why maybe that wouldn't happen, or maybe why that's still worth it?
Well, I'm pretty sure Shannon took that evidence from, I'm not sure which country, but not in the US. And given that the US has the highest GDP in the world, you could assume that the overall quality of the healthcare would be a lot better.
That's an awesome response. And back onto the affirmatives argument. The affirmative talked about how medical debt is really bad right now, and Shannon's response was that, well, it's bad, but it's not as bad as the situation would be after an economic collapse. Do you have any response to that?
Well, like I already said before, the possibility of an economic collapse is close to none. So that's not really a worry.
Awesome. Thank you so much, William. Next up, we have Hrithvik. Hrithvik is going to be giving the closing speech for the negation. So there might be some detail-oriented responses, but mainly we're looking at the big picture. Hrithvik, why do you think at the end of the day, it's not worth it to adopt a single-payer healthcare system?
If we were to really judge what's the best idea for or the worst idea for us, we need to take into account of everyone, not just the people in need, but humanity as a total. So if we do this, it will inevitably increase taxes on everyone in the US rather than just helping the others. And with more taxes, this will cause, as my peers said, an economic collapse. Now, humanity's ultimate goal is to thrive and grow further and to push through all the troubles that come upon it. So if we implement single-payer health insurance, eventually humanity will fall because a lot of the countries, most countries depend on the US for many things. So, yeah.
Yo, sorry, I hate to cut you off because you were on a roll. That was a great speech. I do want to hear in our closing minute from Tobin, who's going to tell us big picture why it's worth it to have single payer healthcare.
All right. So, big picture, you are looking at 1/10 of the population of the US that is not insured. That is 31 million people. It is not a small number. And the economic collapse is barely a risk. Economies do not collapse because you spend money. And also, according to I forgot the exact site, but let's see, CMS.gov, we are currently spending $4 million a year on healthcare anyway. That 4 trillion on healthcare annually already. So if you actually compare those numbers, that's 34 trillion on healthcare or 40 trillion on healthcare. It comes out cheaper.
Thank you so much, everybody. Please, let's recognize all of the LDers and all of the wonderful work they did on both sides of this topic.
Woo! Great job, LD. All right, folks, we have come to our final category of the showcase. I want to welcome back to the stage our Congress coaches, Andrea and Gally, to tell us about what the returning Congress people will be doing for us today in our showcase.
Hi, so returning Congress is basically going to do the same thing. We're going to have 2-minute speeches, 2-minute speeches, 3-minute speeches. They're full speeches. They'll give their full speeches. And then there will be 1 minute of questioning after, and we are welcoming all of our new Congress members to also question the returning Congress members if they want to. So this should be very exciting. First up, we have Serena. Serena, whenever you are ready.
Got it. First, to truly understand this bill, let's go to New York's point of view. We see a big, beautiful green river that has polluted bubbles floating on top and hardly any sea life. Well, that's fine. It's just the appearance. It has to be safe. It's just water, after all. Except that'll be where we're wrong. New York, because it's busy, never sleep style of living, humanity tends to be destructive. We throw plastic bags that later make its way to the ocean to strangle sea life. We throw trash that ends up rotting and causing our waters to be unsafe to its touch. And finally, we put zero effort into taking care of our waters and leave it to be a sightseeing activity instead of being able to dip our feet in the very waters that our city stands on. And yes, I'm sure you all get it. New York's water is unsafe, dirty, blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't have to be unsafe. It doesn't have to be the reoccurring topic that everyone notices and no one takes action on. I'll give one word that can solve this problem. Oysters. Oysters are a glimpse into the clean, blue, clear water that are our rivers. The Billion Oyster Project is dedicated to bringing that future closer and closer. They say oyster reefs provide habitats for hundreds of species, protect our city from storm damage, reduce flooding, and prevent erosion on the shorelines. We can help the ecosystem in our water by bringing oysters to the table. They donate shells after oysters have been donated, and of course, benefit from an act of kindness. And they help our earth become whole again. Do we as citizens, do you want to see something as simple as polluting our waters by being careless, something that damages the earth that we are lucky enough to be standing on today? Everyone can clean up their act as we clean the waters by passing today's legislation. Restaurants can help this cause get up to $1,000 off their tax each year and help business thrive. 10 cents off taxes for each shell donated seems like easy money, of course. In order to reach $1,000 limit, restaurants would need to donate 10,000 shells per year, which is definitely intimidating, but as said by City Guide New York, New Yorkers eat up to 500,000 oysters every week. AKA 10,000 oyster shells donated isn't comparable to how many are consumed and served in restaurants, and we would be aiding to our earth. Think, every restaurant in New York donating 10,000 shells each week. New York would have the cleanest of clean waters. And not to mention, taxes are considered one of the biggest nuisances in America today. People complain about the burden of taxes and it only weighs people down. As said by Upserve, they state, restaurants can be taxed tens of thousands of dollars per year. And though $1,000 doesn't seem like much motive, it definitely is a start and something that can incline restaurants to do the right thing and donate. We have spent too long trying to help our earth, and now it's time to put those attempts into action. Do we want to jeopardize our world, our loved ones, sea life, and all the other animals we share this planet with because of uncertainty? Side with me on the strongest side of the affirmation and pass legislation.
Thank you, Serena, for that amazing speech. Now calling any and all questioners.
Okay. Quick question. Can I do indirect? Because it's just us.
Well, you have a minute and you get to kind of split it with whoever else wants to question, but honestly, you can go for direct. can have 30 seconds walk.
Okay.
I'll give you just that 25 seconds, okay?
All right. Senator Rodriguez, great speech, but do you believe that oysters are the best way to clean our waters?
Really not, but I believe it is a start because we've seen so many attempts at trying to clean our earth, and we've seen the outcomes of climate change. And why want to further that when we can have a bill that passes and helps our earth even further?
Okay, so you said it's not the best solution, so why aren't you negating?
Because we need to take the step to kind of continue the flow of helping our earth. We've seen climate change, we've seen all the effects it has on our earth. Why do we want to push that even further? We have a good bill that can help our waters and kind of help patch our earth.
Okay, so
Joanna, your 30 seconds are up. Are there any other questioners? I would love if any of our new Congress members gave it a shot. Please. It's okay if not. Okay, in that case, thank you, Serena. And now, next up, we have Joanna.
It looks like Kaylee is raising a hand. Oh, sorry, Kaylee, I think it's just for Congress, but I really appreciate your enthusiasm. That's awesome. Joanna, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay. This bill has a rather great intention. It's trying.
Okay, I think she cut out, so let's give her a second there.
Joanna?
Every pound of donated oyster shells, restaurants will be allocated 10 cents in tax credit until their max of $1,000 is reached. The bill does not define what or who is allowed to donate the shells. Instead, it uses the broad term restaurants. IRS Notice 2021 through 25 states that restaurants are defined as a business that prepares and sells food or beverages to retail customers for immediate consumption, regardless of whether the food or beverages are consumed on the business's premises. Now, this would mean that food trucks and even bars are considered restaurants for taxing purposes. So let's take a food truck. Basically, anyone can own a food truck. In NYC, the most basic requirement for a food truck is a mobile food vending license, which is given after a virtual 15-hour lesson, if you can even call it that, over the course of 5 days. Now, would you really trust someone who sat on Zoom for 15 hours to cook food and to cook your oysters, which are seafood that are usually eaten raw? See, some places just will not be reliable enough to trust that they will donate shells in the right condition. Now, this leads me to my next point. This bill is also failing in its fault to only care about the amount of shells being donated without stopping to consider the condition of these shells. Again, as I stated, also supported by Business Insider, raw oysters are either still alive or freshly killed when you eat them. This is because the heart is right next to the bottom adductor muscle, so in most cases, separating the meat from the shell kills it. And naturally, from the moment that anything dies, it begins to decompose. This means that restaurants in turn have a limited time to actually donate the shells before the shells are officially rotten. Yet, this bill does nothing to clarify the condition in which the oysters can be donated. If pounds of shells are donated with rotten parts, how will the bill tell the difference or make deductions for taxing purposes? Another question this bill does not answer. I want to clarify that I am totally on board with the intention of this bill. I totally agree that a small step is better than none. But if we're going to make a step, we need to make sure that we're doing it in the right way and that the execution is proper.
Thank you, Joanna. Any and all questioners? Serena?
Well, seeing the effects of climate change and all the ecosystem problems that we have are kind of speeding up, do you have any other solution to this? Because I see no other way we could take the first step without having this bill pass.
Okay, I'm not saying that we need a whole entire solution. I'm saying that this bill, it has a great intention, but we do need to clarify this bill so that loopholes aren't available to the public.
Are there any other questioners? Any other questions? Seeing none, the chair. Oh, Kaylee, we love. Can we give Kaylee a questioning mic? Kaylee, would you like to ask a question? Go ahead.
Okay.
My question for Joanna is like, do you really think that if this bill doesn't get passed, then what else are we supposed to do?
Okay, I am not saying we shouldn't pass this bill. I'm saying that we need to clarify the bill so that people don't abuse the resources. Like I stated, you have people that, like, according to this bill, you can legally donate rotten shells. Are we seriously going to use rotten shells to create oyster reefs? What kind of oyster is going to live on a rotten shell? That's not going to help us. You know, we need to make sure that loopholes are not available to the public so that they can then not abuse the resources. This bill is totally fine, but once we just clear out these tiny technicalities, I would be on the outside.
Would you agree that you would like to pass a form of the bill that was clarified?
Yes, definitely. But I have to negate because that form is not what we have today.
Okay, it looks like we have 30 seconds left. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chelsea. Serena, hit it quick.
Okay, so piggybacking off of the other question, how do you know that the Billion Oyster Project wouldn't filter through the rotten shells and still give the tax credit available?
Well, the shells are rotten, and personally, I don't think that they're starting to decompose. I don't think that it would be safe for the environment to put rotten items in the waters that are already bad.
So in the Billion Oyster Project, never states if it goes through the rotten shells or if it like filters through it. So how do you know that they don't filter through the rotten shells? And is
In
that
a very Congress fashion, we have run out of time because this is an experience some of us know all too well. Unfortunately, we do not have time for any more questioners or speakers. Thank you to Serena and Joanna, staffs for both of them for killing it this week. Yep, and that is High School Congress. Or
Give it up for Congress, folks. That was so good. I really like the interp debate crossover there. Way to go, Kaylee, with those phenomenal questions and follow-up questions. Phenomenal job to all of our Congress students and coaches. Loved that. We have made it to the end of our showcase, which means it is time to hear some